So on the top of the page, you should have Lesson 1.1, Addition of Signed Numbers as your title. And what we're going to do is go through 4 basic rules that are going to help us keep our fact straight as far as combining like terms when you're adding numbers, whether they're positive or negative. There are 4 examples that I'm going to go through quickly so that you can see what's what. The key and most important thing, the key takeaway, is that every negative cancels with a positive. 1 for 1. Every negative cancels with every positive. 1 for 1. So think of it as the negative and the positive being on opposite teams, are going to war. Okay, so you have the negatives standing on the hill and the positives are moving up the hill, and they are fighting. They are enemies and they are knocking each other off one at a time, 1 for 1. Okay, and what happens is the one that has the most at the end wins. Okay, so if I have 5 on the red team and 3 on the green team, and we are fighting, there's more reds than greens, so the reds are going to come out on top, no matter what the circumstance is. Okay, so every negative cancels with every positive, 1 for 1. So what we're going to do is take a look at how this impacts our combining of like terms. Your first scenario is when you have a positive plus another positive. Well, they're on the same team. So if I have 5 reds on the hill and 3 more reds join me, then what I'm going to end up with is a lot more reds on my team. So this is going to become a bigger positive. Similarly, if I have 5 greens on one team and 6 more greens come to join me, I'm going to have more negatives on my team. So it should be a bigger negative. So things to keep in mind is if you're combining like terms and they're on the same team, meaning they're both the same sign, you're going to add and your number is going to get bigger. And you keep the sign. An example of each of these would look like this. If I had 3 plus 4, that's going to give me a 7 because 3 positives and 4 positives are going to give me a bigger number of 7, and it's positive. Similarly, if I had -5 plus -6, they're both negatives. They're both on the same team. They're going to combine, and you're going to end up with -11. So you keep the sign. So this is a negative because these two are both negative, and you add the numbers. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move to what happens when they don't agree, when they're not on the same team. Okay? So the first ones meant that they were on the same team. Same sign, same team. This is what's going to happen. You're going to add the numbers or add your like terms and keep the sign that they are. Now what's going to happen is if you have them that are opposites. For instance, we are now at war. I've got positives and negatives coming at each other. I have a positive amount and I'm going to add a negative amount. Now, the way that this is written is on purpose. This example indicates that this positive is bigger. The negative is smaller. See how this is capital? I made this a bigger positive, smaller negative. So this is what it looks like. I got 10 soldiers that are on the blue team. I've got 4 soldiers that are on the orange team. They go to war. 10 and 4. So obviously our negatives are going to lose. So what's going to end up happening is at the end, there's going to be more positives. Because remember, 1 cancels with 1 every single time. The problem is these negatives aren't going without a fight. So that means that if I have 4 negatives, the negatives are going to take out 4 positives. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up with a smaller positive number. Okay, an example of that to show you right away would be like if I had 10 plus -2. So these are on different teams. Because they're on different teams, they're fighting. They're going to cancel each other out 1 for 1. This means that 2 of them, they're like looking at the 10 going, okay, we're definitely not going to make it. All right, there's definitely more positives than negatives. So know that my answer right away is going to be a positive. Okay? The problem is 2 of them are going to take out 2 of the 10. So if 2 of these take out 2 of the 10, that means that there's going to be 8 left. And they're still on the positive team. The last type is when the negatives are bigger. When the negatives are bigger, what's going to happen is you're going to go to war. You're going to war because they're on opposite teams. Okay, they're fighting 1 for 1. They're going to cancel each other out. So if I have more negatives show up to the fight than positives, then I'm going to end up with negatives at the end. Negatives are going to win, but the positives aren't going without a fight. So that means that there's going to be less negatives than what started, but it'll still be negative as the outcome. There'll just be less of them. And the example that I want to show you for that would be like -15 plus 4. So the positives are coming to this fight and they're like, yeah, there's definitely more negatives. The negatives are going to win, but we're not going down without a fight. So 4 of these guys are going to take out 4 of these guys. So we're going to reduce the amount of negatives by 4, and that's going to give us 11. But the thing is, the 11 is going to be negative. There are going to be 11 negatives left at the end. Once you get the hang of this, you need to realize that this is all about war. This is all about, do I have people on the same team making my team bigger? Am I adding people to the same team to make it bigger? Or are we fighting on the hill and seeing what the outcome's going to be? When you start to think of this like war, it makes a lot more sense. Now, what we need to do is we need to kind of organize our thoughts now. So on the top, we said when they're the same team, meaning the same sign, you're going to add the numbers and keep the sign. That's for these top 2 examples, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little page break here because this is a different scenario. At the bottom here of my notes, I've got different teams. When you're at different teams, you're going to war. And that means that you have different signs. So you have a positive and a negative being added, or a negative and positive being added. So all you have to remember to do is, if you notice, the outcomes are getting smaller, not bigger. I know addition means that typically when it's addition, you're going to get a bigger number, but that's only when you're on the same team. When you're on different teams, you're going to subtract the digits and you're going to take the sign of the winning team. And the way we figure that out is who's got more in the beginning. In this scenario, 10 was bigger than -2, so that means that I'm going to subtract that and get 8. And because it's the bigger one was positive, I'm going to keep that positive. In the second scenario, these 2 are different teams. I'm going to subtract 15 and 4 and get 11. And because there were more negatives in the beginning, I'm going to end up with negative at the end. Here's the finale, your summarizer. If I have a positive plus a positive, I'm going to get a bigger positive. If I have a negative plus a negative, I'm going to get a bigger negative. Wow, look at that. If I have a bigger positive and a smaller negative, we're fighting. More positives there, so the positive is going to win, but it's going to be a smaller positive. Whereas if I have a bigger negative and a smaller positive, we're going to fight. The negatives are going to win, but there's going to be less negatives at the end. Okay?